Well, I will get started with just kind of our announcements ahead of time before Mark and Tanya do their presentation and to also let people join. But my name is Teresa Larson. I am the technical facilitator for this. So if there's anything going on your end that I can help with that's not related to the presentation, you just let me know. You can do that either through the chat or through email, which hopefully you all got as part of the Zoom invite when you registered. That's the word. But moving forward, I'm going to be providing the USU land acknowledgement. And that is, as a land grant institution, Utah State University campuses and centers reside and operate on the territories of the 8 tribes of Utah, who have been living, working, and residing on this land from time immemorial. These tribes are the Confederated Tribes of the Goshute Indians, Navajo Nation, Ute Indian Tribe, Northwestern Band of Shoshone, Paiute Indian Tribe of Utah, San Juan Southern Paiute, Skull Valley Band of Goshute, and White Mesa Band of the Ute Mountain Ute. We acknowledge these lands currently carry the stories of these nations and their struggles for survival and identity. We recognize elders, past and present, as peoples who have cared for and continue to care for the land. In offering this land acknowledgement, we affirm Indigenous self-governance history, experiences, and resiliency of the Native people who are still here today. So thank you all for joining us. This presentation is being sponsored between the Transforming Communities Institute at Utah State University and the Utah State University Department of Social Work, who is providing the approval for continuing education credits for this session. To ensure that you get continuing education credits, there are just a couple of things that you need to make sure that you do as participants. And the first one is to ensure that whatever name is displayed on Zoom matches the name that you need on a continuing education certificate. That's how we track attendance, so how long you're here, and then as well as connecting it to the follow-up survey. So in order to receive those credits along those lines, you do have to stay for the entirety of the session and complete the follow-up survey. I will put the link in the chat at the very end so that anybody who wants to take it right away can, but you will also receive it in a follow-up email. Like I said before, if you have any questions, feel free to talk to me. And if there are questions about the presentation, it sounds like Mark and Tanya are open to just a discussion and questions throughout. So you can feel free to ask them. You can each unmute your mic if you so choose, but I will monitor that just in case folks forget. And now I will introduce Tanya and Mark before they get started. So Mark has been married to his best friend, love of his life, and partner in projects since 2005. Much of his experience and a few gray hairs have come from raising 5 amazing and energetic children. He enjoys working with families, couples, and children, helping them work together to become stronger and healthier. Mark has worked with families in crisis since 2003 in various capacities. Clinically, he has been serving families in the northern Utah area since 2007. He founded Anson Family Counseling in 2013, and in 2018, he contracted with the state of Utah and has grown a successful private practice serving clients from the Idaho border down to Davis County. Mark is a TBRI practitioner, making sense of your worth facilitator, and is certified in other therapy modalities as well. He leads the charge to bring solid, effective, and evidence-based practice to some of Utah's most vulnerable people, children involved with the child welfare system. He enjoys developing programs to meet their needs. Tanya is a certified practitioner in mind-body bridging and became a TBRI practitioner in 2017. Tanya has 20 years of varied experience working in the field of social work. She founded an organization in Haiti in 2013, Emma's House, to help orphaned youth in Haiti become independent and currently serves part-time as their program director. She has worked in the criminal justice system and specializes in working with law enforcement in therapy. As an adoptive mother of two, she loves helping foster and adoptive families thrive by giving skills to connect and self-regulate. She has 6 children and 2 grandgirls. She enjoys being with her family, backpacking, hiking, and being outside. So thank you, Mark and Tanya, for presenting this today, and you all have the rest of the time for your presentation.
You know, what's kind of funny is Tanya, both you and I love the outdoors and spending time. I don't know why we don't do this outside. It'd be a lot more fun anyway than being virtual.
Yeah.
Anyway, welcome everyone. We're excited to be chatting with you. We had just, it wasn't too long ago, I was talking with CJ Sorensen at our Logan office, and he's the specific field supervisor for one of our employees. And it was really good to get to meet him and work with him in that capacity, and then to talk with him about TBRI and to say, hey, any chance we can get, we want to be able to spread this. And he responded well to be able to give us this opportunity to share about what TBRI is. So whether you want to hear it or not, you're here. I think you want to hear it. Everyone, we hope that you negotiate your needs as we're talking. That's one of the important things for a safe and healthy attachment for us, any of us, is a skill to be able to negotiate your needs. If you have any questions, just go ahead and speak up. What I will do is I'll turn the time over to Tanya to start doing some introduction to TBRI.
Yeah, so I came across TBRI after I adopted 2 kids from Haiti at the ages of 3 and 9. They came from an institution, and I was looking for something to help me parent them. I mean, you just can't parent these kids in traditional ways. Most of you probably know that. So I was looking for a trauma-informed intervention to kind of help me manage my own and my children's behavior, is, to be honest, what I was looking for. And I came across TBRI. I went to a Empowered to Connect, which is just a conference, and was introduced to it, and it all just made sense. And I've been using it with almost everybody in my life since then. Since about 2013, I would say. So anyway, it's had a huge impact in my life personally, and I'm just so excited to share it with you. TBRI stands for Trust-Based Relational Intervention, and it is an intervention. It is not a therapeutic modality. So I think that's important to note. It's a way of relating with children and honestly people, particularly who come from hard places, who have endured trauma. It's evidence-based. There's lots of research. You can go on their website and look at the research for TBRI. It's attachment-based, trauma-informed, and it's a holistic intervention. And there's 3 principles that kind of guide TBRI. We talked about the connecting principle, and that talks about, attachment and really bringing in those concepts of attachment into working with kids from hard places, people from hard places. And the empowering principles, making sure needs are met, just basic needs are met, being aware of even the environment, and making sure that things are met there, kind of this really being attuned to what's going on and what the needs are. And then the correcting principles. And this is probably everybody's favorite part of TBRI, and it's a piece that isn't included in a lot of trauma interventions that I've learned about. We talk about how to correct behaviors. We give specific words to say, even very specific interventions of how to deal with behavior, and the whole mindset behind it. And the reason it comes last is because the connecting is key to all of it. And then we connect first and then correct. And all of the correcting principles have the connecting principles in mind, are based on this idea of attachment and building relationship and building trust. And yeah, to disarm fear, because most behaviors, when you're dealing with somebody who has endured trauma, come from fear. So. And this is a video. This is just a short little video.
Oh, hold
I'm
on.
gonna pause it. I got a little head first. This is
Yeah,
a short
it's
little
fine.
video, just a little animate to kind of go over the principles of TBRI and introduce it. And it's really short. If you just take a minute and pay attention, it's really helpful.
TBRI, trust-based relational intervention, has at its core building a trusting relationship. It has 3 sets of principles, and they look at the child as a whole. When you think about development, the baby cries, and I say, yes, I will comfort you. And so this child learns that they have a voice. They learn trust, which is the lesson of the first year of life. I can trust. There are so many children from hard places. And for those children, their capacity to trust has been fiercely damaged. The brain chemistry of a child who cries and no one comes is dramatically altered. The child with a history of trauma or loss or abuse has no hope of healing without a nurturing relationship. In every way that I make time and space, that I give touch, eye contact, and I give words, I am going to empower this child to go back to the beginning of what he or she should have experienced in the arms of a loving parent that said, when you cry, I'll come. The phenomenal thing about a trust-based intervention is, as we connect to this child, as we build safety, we actually change the brain chemistry. We change the wiring of the brain. This is really the heart and soul of all that we are and all that we do. Do I look into the child's eyes? Do I touch their arm when I talk to them? When they talk to me, do I stop what I'm doing and talk to them? This is the essence of mindfulness. The excitatory chemicals about I'm afraid, I'm hungry, I'm cold, but those are balanced when the caregiver comes and gives warmth. All regulation occurs first with an external regulator. So in the beginning, I regulate all. They're cold, I bring warmth. They're crying, I bring myself. And out of my regulation, their brain develops capacity for self-regulation. If this child didn't have this experience, that child doesn't feel safe. This chemistry can be altered, first by knowing they're safe, second by nutrient-rich foods, third by my environmental regulation of that child's emotion, and fourth by appropriate exercise. So we can balance brain chemistry by creating a holistic environment. We clearly have to deal with behavior. Correcting means showing a child the right behavior, praising him when he gets it, and showing it to him until he can get it right, and showing him with no fear and no shame, so that he builds success, not a greater sense of failure. So the message of hope for our families is that we can help our children to dramatic levels of healing. We simply have to be devoted to it and be willing to invest what it's going to take.
Hold on. I think I went and there we go. There we go. Showing off my technological skills there, everyone. But we got to the right slide. I think something that's very important to understand is that when children, especially those in foster care, are interacting, we have this idea a lot of times as helpers that this child is in a safe environment. We want to help them, and we assume that they are safe because, well, they are, but they may not feel safe. And that's one of the things that's important to talk about, is this TBRI principle of felt safety. So I'll say that again, children can be safe and not feel safe. And so many times it can be frustrating, as you saw in this animate, right? Like, what's going on in their brains from early on is they get set to hot. Their brains are geared for fight or flight, which can be very frustrating for a lot of parents. And we want to be the help for them, but a lot of times we're not really seen as the help. We're seen as the hurt. So our first hurdle before we get into any other kind of work with a child is to help them feel safe. Because when they feel safe, they're free to explore their environment. And they're free to explore their relationships. We don't often help them as much as we would like to, because we assume that they're safe when we start interacting with them. And then what happens is they can turn, just as quick as possible and have these behaviors that seem to come out of nowhere, but they're really not. So one of the things to help create that feeling of safety is what TBRI calls the giving of yeses. And I find this fun to be able to talk about. A lot of times working with, many parents, right? We have this idea that, well, I can't say yes to everything. Well, let's not use our black and white thinking, right? Let's say yes as much as we can. And we create opportunities to say yes. So one of the things I remember that Karen Purvis, one of the developers of TBRI, she would walk around amongst her students, and she would have a big bucket of bubble gum, and she would carry that on purpose so that the kids could come ask her, and she would say yes. And she would say, if you ask with good eyes and kind words, then yes, I will give you that gum. And she'd get kids with these wads of gum in their mouth, and she didn't really mind anyway, right? Because that deep chewing is actually really calming for the kids as well. But we can find opportunities to say yes to kids. And I think we can all understand that and appreciate that when we give a yes, we make someone feel safe. When we say no, that person doesn't know, right? They don't feel safe. We've taken away from them or withdrawal from their emotional bank account. Why all of this is because TBRI is focused on rewiring the brain. Is focused on helping kids get back to their developmental trajectory. We don't have to focus so much on getting down to all the nitty-gritty points of their trauma, talking about it all and helping them process through it. Not that those things are always bad, but that's not the place to start. We've got to start with that feeling of felt safety. So I have worked with kids in foster care for a long time. And it wasn't until recently, we decided, my wife and I, to have our own kid in foster care. And it has been quite the journey as we learn and to be trying to not just be a therapist, which I can't for this kid, right? We have someone else for that, but to now be someone who is trying to help him and trying to walk all of the talk that I've been having for so long. And it is challenging. But we are focused on helping him rewire his brain from the beginning, trying to create that feeling of safety. And it is interesting to see all of these things that are true that have been talked about. Like, he is set to hot, and he is ready to fight, and he is ready to see that we are going to take everything away from him. And it's fun to watch as we're able to not give that to him and to see his little brain just kind of take a moment and try to figure that out. Anyway, felt safety is a concept that we could do more of, and so that we don't become the hurt. We want to be the help, right? As much as we can. And where we are the hurt, we can own that, and we can not be too hard on ourselves, because all of us are just trying, really. So because of the population that we're talking about specifically, we're talking about kids in foster care, kids adopted from foster care mostly. It can be applied with all different kids, but we're talking about a big issue called complex developmental trauma. It's complex because it's not just happening one single time. It's not just happening to these kids from an external source, someone outside the family. It's complex because those intricate relationships that are supposed to be formed to help these children who've developed their brains are actually the very relationships that bring them harm. So it messes with that development. And these kids are very behind. And a lot of times, like for our kid who's almost 9, a lot of times he's like a 3-year-old emotionally. And we have to help him from that standpoint. And when we see it that way, we then have the compassion to help him have that felt safety. Any thoughts on that, Tanya?
No, it's just, I mean, this issue of being safe versus feeling safe, right? I can be safe, but I don't feel safe inside. And so the whole objective of TBRI is to make sure kids feel safe. And it's by building that connection and building that trust, versus just making sure they are safe. So yeah, it's a cornerstone of TBRI.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions about that so far? I think I'm feeling myself talk a lot and wanting to hear someone else's voice. I just explained it so well.
Okay.
Oh, no, go ahead, Tanya. Yeah.
Yeah. So as I said, the connecting principles are just the foundation for the empowering and the correcting principles. And so you have this mindfulness piece of the connecting principles, and then you have this actual practical engagement piece. So the mindfulness piece is really about you and making sure you know what's going on with you. You know, we tend to get dysregulated when kids misbehave or aren't meeting our expectations. And so it's important to be mindful of yourself as you're walking this journey with this child. A big piece of that is understanding your attachment style. TBRI goes deep into attachment styles and helps you understand your own attachment style and your child's attachment style and how that might be causing some tension in the relationship and dissuading connection. Working on healing your own traumas. So we all have our own stuff, right? And that sometimes creates this this wall so that we can't see reality and what's actually going on. So TBRI talks about just identifying your triggers. This is kind of a side note from TBRI, but my main hat I wear, I work for Anson Family Counseling, but I also work for the iSystem Institute at USU, which is the home of a therapeutic modality called mind-body bridging. And mind-body bridging is an excellent modality to be able to identify your own triggers, right? What is it about this interaction with this kid that is just getting me lit up? And so that I can't regulate myself, because I can't regulate someone else if I can't regulate myself. And so that's just kind of a little plug for mind-body bridging. It's a good tool to use to kind of help yourself regulate, identify triggers. Attunement, right? This being mindful, being aware of what's going on with your child, what's happening with them, what are their triggers, right? Identifying, TBRI talks about being a detective, right? So being a detective in that, okay, what are their triggers? What are the times of day? Maybe, what actions, what person might be triggering them. And so just really being attuned to your child and all the things that attunement means with regard to attachment, and being present, being fully present, right? When they ask a question or you want them to, come to you, you don't yell, Johnny, come here from the other side of the room. You go and you're present with them when you ask them to come to you. So that's just another example of being mindful, of the way that you're interacting with your kids. Engagement. So these are the engagement strategies are very practical, right? So keeping everything playful, right? So when we're playing, it's impossible to experience fear. And so we try to keep everything as playful as possible. We try to keep our engagement playful as much as possible. Behavior matching, that's a small little, we talk about mirror neurons, that kind of thing. Just nothing's more validating than somebody doing what you're doing, right? So if my kid's doing this, the idea of I do that too, and it becomes a little bit playful. So just little practical things like that. And that's what I love about TBRI. It just gives you all these little nuggets of really practical stuff to be able to do with your kids. Eye contact, right? So
can I jump in real quick? I just
Mhm.
wanted to share one thing that I love to do with behavior matching. And it's very small, but when I'm meeting with a kid, and we always have suckers, there's little dum-dums here at Anson Family Counseling. It's super important. Many points why we give those, even though I'm sure they have red dyes in them and whatever, right? But the idea with behavior matching, at least in this point, is let's say the kid picks out a red one, wants a cherry, and then I pick out the same one, and then I can notice, hey, you got the same one as I did. Why don't we give your parent the same one as well? And it's a small little thing, but by doing that is joining them in their experience and their moment. Behavior matching is super important, not just for connecting, but for increasing safety. Sorry, I just had to
Yeah,
throw that.
no, that's a
Go
great
ahead, Tanya.
example. That's a great example. Yeah, eye contact. We all know the science behind eye contact and how that builds connection. And so and eye contact isn't necessarily me looking down at you, making sure you get down to their level. It's another connecting principle, engagement principle, getting down to their level, looking at them in the eyes, and soft eyes, right? Like there's a difference in looking at them like this versus the soft eyes. Healthy touch, just that little touch on the shoulder, just even mirror, even kind of phantom touching, we call it, if a child isn't comfortable with being touched, just kind of this idea of connecting through touch as much as possible. Your tone of voice, being mindful of your tone of voice, keeping it down, keeping it slow, your cadence. That's really important when working with kids who come from hard places.
Yeah, another thing I want to share, one of my favorite things to talk about with people is this idea of being as close as they will let me be. So for my kid who's joined our family through foster care right now, we're in our minds, we're like, yep, our goal is adoption. But this kid doesn't know that he wants that yet. And there's times when he wants us to give him a good hug, and other times when he is very resistant of that. Especially when he's having one of his meltdowns because he can't handle his feelings. I don't know why he can't handle living with us sometimes, but it's a little crazy at my house. But when he is having a meltdown and he goes away from us, a lot of times it's tempting as a parent to just go in and I'm going to handle this right now. We're going to talk, we're going to deal with it. And instead, being as close as he will let me be. So if he wants to be in his room and he's chosen to put himself there, I can go as close as he'll let me be. So maybe I'll stand, maybe I try to enter the room and he says, go away. I can step back for a little bit, right? But I'm going to approximate that touch. I may give it some time. He's going to take a few deep breaths and I'm going to take a few deep breaths and then I'm going to come closer. And then if he doesn't say anything, or if he doesn't try to hide anymore, like under his blanket, I can get a little closer and then a little closer. And that proximity does a lot of work for regulation at his pace, at my pace. And we're co-regulating that together until eventually he's okay with me putting my hand like on his back or something or talking to him. Another thing that's important is being able to help him see the difference between angry eyes and calm eyes. And I'll say, I'm definitely not perfect at having kind or soft eyes all the time. And so to help him see the difference, then look, like, what are my eyes telling you? And then is getting him used to looking at me, looking in my eyes. And you can see that this process then becomes this interactive one of helping him recognize, helping me connect. And it's just super, super powerful though. All of these things can interplay pretty much throughout any reaction or interaction that we have with the youth. Do you want me to jump in and start talking about empowering principles here? Okay. So I'll start this off and we'll probably talk about this later. When it comes to empowering, like what does that really mean? And I like to look at it on the two sides here. Usually I talk about physiological first. Physiological strategies, what does that mean? It means helping empower their body to feel good. Most of the children that we work with feel awful a lot of the time in their body, and they have a hard time just regulating their emotions because their body doesn't feel good. Their blood sugar depletes quickly. Now, I think a lot of us can understand what it's like to feel hangry. This is something where they may not even recognize that they need to eat. And it may be even like a sensory issue. most of the kids that we work with have some level of sensory processing disorder, or if it doesn't rise to a disorder, they have sensory issues. And when we have those, it can disrupt our lives pretty significantly. For me, I have a low level. I don't know how many people here, I bet most people here have something sensory that just gets them, whether it's nails or fingernails on a chalkboard or styrofoam. My wife can't handle styrofoam. And I'll tell you something, if you want to get on my negative list pretty quick, wear corduroy. I don't know what it is about corduroy, but that sends my system into an awful place. I'm really kidding about that. Other than it's true, I don't like corduroy for whatever reason. But I'm thinking about that on a lower level. A lot of times these kids live in discomfort. So what do? We help their bodies feel good. We help give them things that make them feel good, and we help them avoid things that make them feel awful. It's pretty simple when it comes to sensory. So if we can empower their body to feel good, that's a huge part of the battle, right? On the flip side, or not, well, the other part to this would be the ecological strategies. And I'll tell you, at first, when I was learning about that, I'm like, what the heck is ecological, right? Like, we're talking about the environment. I like to keep things simple. This is the environment for these kids, right? We need to empower their environment. And that's a whole lot of different things, right? We're going to encourage them to have things that are predictable. So having rituals that we do with them can be super important. A waking up routine, going to bed routine, what we do when we go to school. A lot of times as a therapist, it's how do I start my session? Do we do it the same way every time? Can we give them some fun every single time? So there are routines and rituals that we can do that are super powerful. One of the things in our family that we do is we'll have a morning prayer, and we will do a cheer together. And lately, because my kids really got into Newsies, we are doing we all put our hands in the middle and we say, now is the time to seize the day. And it's cheesy, I know, but we do that. And we can expect that. Another powerful thing, I don't know, maybe Tanya, do you want to talk about transitions? If I just hand that off to you?
Yeah, transitions are really important. So if you think about a transition, they can be quite the trigger, because you're taking me from this safe space, right? It can be, well, I'll give you an example. So my child, when he first came home, had a really big issue with showers. And of course, I don't know all of the trauma and everything that's happened. He had a really big issue with showers. And as we kind of explored it a little bit, I realized it was because a transition at the institution where he was, he would be playing, and then all of a sudden it would be shower time, and they would pluck him up and make him go take a shower. And so what did that do? That took away all voice, choice, control from him. And so it was that sense of powerlessness about the shower. It wasn't that anything bad had happened in a shower or anything like that. It was that transition. And so the more we can be mindful of transitions, the more we can really minimize behaviors a lot of times. So maybe we'll talk about a little bit later, but we can give a warning, hey, you know what? If you could quit playing your video game in 3 minutes, we're going to get ready to go, or in 10 minutes, or finish that show and then turn it off. Just making these transitions, bedtime routine, wake up routine, all of those, so that we know that it's predictable. So the child knows what to expect. They don't have anything coming at them that they don't know. So those routines are really important. And just being mindful of transitions, just being aware that they're hard is really powerful, because that's just something that kind of slips sometimes, that we just kind of expect kids to, okay, get in the car, get your shoes on, let's go, right? Well, for them, you're taking them out of their safe space, and you're asking them to go to a place that you are controlling them and you're wanting them to go to. And that doesn't feel safe for a child who, when someone else has had control or been the boss or told them to do something, it hasn't been safe. So just being really mindful of transitions is really important.
I think you totally just nailed it when you explained that. And you talked about the safety with transitions and how to make it better. I mean, I see it all the time, right? It's a lot about these power and control games that we just don't want to join. And it's not because they're trying to be little snots, even though sometimes we may feel very frustrated by what they're doing. They are in survival mode. And they don't even know why they're doing it. They don't even know why they fight every time with this transition or that transition. So whatever we can do, and I'll give one little nugget that I have found. I was working with a kid, and this kid actually had autism, but I found it to work with all sorts of difficult struggles that kids have. But being able to, I raise my hand up like this, and I say, "Hey, my hand is going to go down." And as soon as my hand touches the desk or my knee or whatever, and then what I do is I can say, as soon as this is down, then it'll be your turn for this, or then it'll be time for you to ask a question or whatever, right? So this transition between me and them, they're very intrusive, they're very interrupting, right? And so when I do that, you bet those kids are like this, and they're watching that hand go down. And you can go a little slower, you can go quicker, right? If you really want to give the kids a hard time that they're being acting up, you can go up a little bit, right? But the idea is then you get that hand down, and then you give them that time. Anyway, that's just one thing that I have found that has helped with transitions. There's probably 1,000,001 ways to do a good, healthy transition.
Something that I want to note quickly, and you can leave it where it is, Mark.
Okay.
All of these skills are not only good for young children. My kids are teenagers now, and I use all of these principles and all of these same things with my teenagers. It just looks a little different, right? So I just want to mention that this isn't just for small kids. It's for adults,
Yeah.
So, I mean, just the lady at the grocery store. I'll TBRI the lady at the grocery store.
And
It's
I like
she's
how
having a hard time,
I like how we've made it into a verb. It is
Yeah.
definitely something that has become a verb, right?
Yeah.
When I hear that, I really think of a balance between kindness and firmness. That's a good transition. And maybe
Yeah.
what we'll do is I'll jump into this, and then I'll hand it off to you, Tanya, then
Okay.
as to keep going. But this one is super important, right? Being able to have a balance of kind and firm. Many times people, when they hear TBRI, they kind of think, and especially with my style, I come across a lot of times as really soft, really kind. Maybe not, maybe if you ask my kids, they wouldn't always agree with that. But having that kindness and firmness, right? So I can tell you, I can hold a boundary in a very kind way. That is super important. TBRI is not soft, and it's not letting people walk all over you. So that's important to know what it's not. It is actually very firm. In fact, I had a therapy session not too long ago where I have a boundary. Kids don't touch my computer. And maybe that's my own issue, right? But the kid goes for my computer, and I'm like, and I said very firmly, do not touch my computer, right? Setting a very firm boundary. But very quickly after that, it's flipping into that play. And it's okay to have that balance of kindness and firmness. So anyway, just for people who are worried that we're going to talk about being too kind or being too firm.
Well, and it's that it's a delicate balance. It's a delicate balance. And the correcting principles is the piece of TBRI that, like I've said before, I think is different, and a lot of other curriculums or interventions don't add. And it is this idea of high structure, high nurture, right? We can get too high structure, and then we're just kind of bossing around. But the reason that Mark could say that to that kid is because he had a relationship, he had connection, he had built that nurture, right? So when we're high structure, high nurture, we can have this relationship and this connection with kids where we can, we can ask certain things of them. We can ask them to do this or do that. But when there's no connection, it's really difficult. When there's not that nurture, it's really difficult to have structure.
And that, thank you, Tanya. That's super hard to do when a lot of the teens or children that we work with, heck, even adults, they have almost this desire to push away connection. Thinking of the diagnosis of reactive attachment disorder and how a lot of people kind of fear when they hear that, and understandably so, when we're trying to push for connection, and that's the very thing that will set off the child or youth that we're working with, that they resist connection and unknowingly, and sometimes maybe knowingly, push away connection and fight it and undermine it. So it can become a challenge to really push for that. One of the differences I notice as well between traditional parenting and really using TBRI is that the goal of correction is not simply to get them to behave. We are not over focused on compliance. Sometimes we got to check ourselves if we're too worried about compliance. Is it really something that they need to do? Sometimes it is, though. But the goal of correcting is connection. And that, right, it may sound weird, right? Because it's going to be pulling apart, but the whole goal through the corrective process is to eventually come back to a place where they will do better. So when we're connecting with kids, when we're empowering their bodies and empowering their environments, what happens is they feel better. They feel safe, their bodies feel better, and they're ready. So I like the phrase here, and this is, I love using this because it just flies in the face of a lot of traditional parenting. When children feel good, they will act good. I know it's not grammatically correct, but it sounds good. What I want to share is one thing I like to share with a lot of folks when I do trainings is what I call the corn dog story. And it's crazy how this worked out, but I had this little 3-4-year-old kid in foster care that I was working with, and I was at their foster home. And I kind of referred to her as this little Tasmanian devil. She would create so much chaos in her wake. And there was a time when I was playing blocks with her during a therapy session. We're on the floor, kind of in the living room, and it's time to clean up the blocks, right? Here comes the prompt. We need compliance. We've got to move forward.
Transition.
Right. I didn't transition really well. I didn't. And I here it comes. She starts totally dysregulating, doesn't want to clean up the blocks. I mean, why would she want to do work? She just wants to play, right? She doesn't want to stop playing. So she's dysregulated, but the way she did it is she kind of runs away and she looks back and she's smiling. She wants me to engage in this total dysregulated place, but so she's running around and all over the place. I'm like, okay, time to engage, right? So instead of taking a position of you will clean up these blocks now or else, it became, and I had just done TBRI training, I believe. So I talked to the foster parent real quick and was like, okay, we're going to work on helping her meet her needs. So foster parent eventually caught her. I mean, she's running around, she caught her, scooped her up, and she's wriggling all over the place. And what we did is we're asking her, what do you need? What is it that this child needs? We're trying to figure it out. She doesn't really participate too much, but we're trying to help her. Like, what do you need? Eventually, after some kind questioning, we find out maybe she's hungry. And the foster parent offers a corn dog. And so, do you want a corn dog? And she says, yes. So you would think, after all of this misbehavior, why would we reward with a corn dog? You have to think of it differently. It's not about a reward or consequence or you will behave, right? And this is not strict behaviorism. This is a chance now to help meet a need. Did she really need that? I actually think she did. She was hangry. She couldn't regulate, and she needed some control. So get her a corn dog. We did. We sat down. She's eating the corn dog. She got through a couple bites and she looked up at me and she's like, I'm done. And I said, okay, it's time to clean up the blocks. And she said, I'm not done yet. She goes back to eating the corn dog. She has some more bites. I'm done. Time to clean up the blocks. I'm not done. We go through this. And finally, after she finishes the corn dog, I kid you not, she gets up and she walks over and starts picking up the blocks on her own. And it was not a fight. Corn dogs are not that expensive. Taking the time to help meet a child's needs may seem hard, and it may seem like we're taking way too much time and they should just comply. But what happens is kids, when they feel good, they will act good. And I recognize that's not 100% of the time, and we're not sharing things that will always work. But the general principles are true. And now I just talked too much. Tanya, do you want to? Well, maybe I'll just do one more point, and then we'll have you take over. But I really, maybe the last 2 points on this correcting principles slide. Dr. Purvis, one of the things I heard her say in one of her videos is that if you push hard enough, if you become that abusive person, you can gain compliance, but you will never gain trust. We're looking for the long-term goals here, not short-term compliance. And when we get caught up in short-term compliance, we just do not make the progress that we need. And it's worth putting in the energy. We're not done with an episode of correcting until we can return back to that calmer state and be engaged in playful engagement. And it might take a while, but it does really help. Okay, now I've said my piece. Go ahead, Tanya.
No, you're good. Yeah, we can just go into the strategies. And again, this is what I love about TBRI. It's so practical. It's so and this is what I needed when I first started parenting my kids who were adopted. This is what I needed. I needed just practical. What do I do? What do I say? And some of the so there's proactive strategies to kind of avoid the behavior in the first place, right? We want to stop something from happening in the first place. And then there's responsive strategies. So proactive strategies. Proactive strategies happen beforehand, right? They happen before there's an episode. And so role playing is an example. So instead of waiting until, it's time to pick up the blocks and we have a problem, when the child is regulated, when they're calm, what if we role play picking up the blocks, right? So that kind of wires the brain to do it in a way that's regulated and calm. And so role playing is one, TBR one-liners. So there's these just kind, what is it? I can't think of it. What is it? Gentle and kind. So just these words that we say that become part of our culture. When a child starts to get dysregulated or starts to try to, you can tell that they're going to start getting violent in some way. If you've already taught the term gentle and kind, then when that happens, then you can use that term in that moment when you can feel the dysregulation. And there's a lot of those one-liners that you can kind of just start teaching in moments when the child is regulated, right? Don't wait till the moment when the child is dysregulated to start teaching these tools. And then there's the responsive strategies. So giving choices is really power. The correcting principles are all about sharing power, sharing voice, giving the child voice, giving them control, giving some of your power to them. And so by giving choices, that's what you do. So for example, with my child in the shower, what towel would you like to use? When would you like to go take a shower? Would you like to do it before bed or after you wake up? Or would you like to do it at this time or that time? The more we can give control while still maintaining control ourselves as the authority figure, the more we're going to be able to correct in a way that's connecting. So offering a redo, that's another responsive strategy. So a child misbehaves, right? So if they just, we have the blocks and they're not picking up the blocks, right? No, I don't want to pick up the blocks. Well, would you like to try that again? In a very playful way, right? We keep everything as playful. You want to try that again? Yeah, okay, I'll pick up the blocks. Right. So just trying to keep it, these responsive strategies are where we respond in a way that's still giving power, giving voice, giving control to the child, and not in an authoritative kind of way.
Yeah. Yeah, super important to understand that it's not about trying to just squash the behavior, but really about teaching and responding in a way that's developmentally appropriate. With a teenager and doing a redo, and I mean, if they slam that door, I mean, you could come at them and just take their door off, or you, that's a lot of work. Can't say I've never done that, but one thing that you can do is, if they, slam a door, is just gently say, "Would you like to try that again?" Our kid that we have in foster care right now, he actually hates redos. Um, but the point of it is, a lot of this does not work when a kid is ramped up in their emotions. And that's why we have what we, this next slide here to really help explain how we respond. I can hold him accountable, and I can do it in a way that respects that he's got to work through his feelings before he does a redo. I'll kind of go through this in a minute, but it's super important to understand that he does not have to always comply right away, which makes it tough, especially in a lot of our families when I mean, our biggest phrase every morning is moving forward. And you need to move forward. When one kid's off, everything goes off, right? 3 kids in one bathroom, 3 kids in another bathroom. It's a little crazy. But if we can take that time and be patient with them, we don't have to have that redo done right away. We can address it right away. And then we can work with them. And as soon as they regulate, then we can work on the redo. I hope that makes sense. Like, traditional parenting says, you will correct this right now. No learning is going to happen in those moments. And if we want them to learn, the most important thing is emotional regulation. So we have the ideal response. So like I was saying, it is immediate. We do address things immediately. That's the I. And if you think about that, to be able to address something immediately, we have to be fairly nearby. So we want to be near the child, near this teen, as we're working with them, as we do these things, so that we can respond immediately. Like I said, it doesn't need to be resolved immediately, though. D stands for direct. And to what you were saying, Tanya, right? You don't just call across the room and say, "Hey, I need you to come over here and do this." It's, "I'm going to go to you." I've noticed that's super important with all of my kids, to go to them, look in their eyes and say, "I need you to do this." And then they'll more likely do it. Having that direct approach is super important. If a kid hits another kid, we handle it. We're very direct. Hitting is not okay. We get down on their level, look them in the eyes, ask for them. A lot of times they won't look in our eyes, and that's okay. We don't have to force it, but we can take time with them and then get closer and then look them in the eyes and then talk with them about it. So it does take time. E stands for efficient, which is further explained down below in the levels of response. And I really love one of Karen Purvis's statements that she had. She said, "You don't go after a gnat with an elephant gun." And I've seen that so many times and experienced that myself, is for those small things. And if you have this huge response to it, that just doesn't work. So we then will create their resistance, which will create more of our own resistance. And to borrow a phrase from, if you've ever read the book called The Anatomy of Peace, it's a good one by the Arbinger Institute. I would highly recommend that. But it really talks about this principle of collusion. We start to just ramp each other up when we don't handle things in an efficient way. A stands for action-based. So we are going to have them do something to correct the behavior. It's not so much about dealing out punishments at all, actually. The punishment, if you want to call it that, is doing a redo. It's a learning experience. So we don't actually have that. That's another benefit to this. They don't need to yell. We don't need to ground kids for, for whatever, or get into the power struggle of, okay, 1 more minute. Now you've lost another minute. Now you've lost another, right? It's much better to have a consequence when it's like, hey, would you like to try that again? It's not a problem, but let's give you some grace and let you try it again. It's just a different way of looking at it. And of course, when we're interacting with them, our interaction is leveled at the behavior, never the child. The child or youth that we're working with, they are good, wonderful, precious. What they did was not okay. And sometimes that gets really convoluted in how we approach when we take it out on the youth and to say, you are doing this, you are making the problem, instead of looking at the problem as the problem. Tanya, do you want to talk about levels of response? Unless you had another comment on that.
No, that was great. That was great. Yeah. The just one more thing about immediate is just good learning takes place within 5 seconds. And so if it's more than that, it's difficult for a child to learn and to kind of get what we're trying to do. So the levels of response. So this kind of goes back to the efficient piece in the ideal response. Levels of response. We are almost always going to try keep things at level 1, engagement, right? Playful engagement. We're going to keep things playful as much as possible. Remember, play disarms fear. So level 1, right? So the example of, I don't want to pick up my blocks, right? Level 1 is going to be like, well, there's a red one there. You like the color red. How about that? So just find a way to, when you can tell, okay, we're going to have to start the correction process. Just find a way to make it playful, right? Or I'll pick up one, you pick up one, that kind of thing. So then we have level 2, which is structured engagement. And that's when, okay, no, I'm not going to pick up my blocks. Well, there's a red one, trying to keep it playful. No, I still don't want to pick up my blocks. We're going to move to structured engagement. So we're going to move to that level 2. And at level 2, my voice is going to be a little less playful. I'm going to be a little bit more firm. I'm going to bring some structure into the situation. And I'm going to say, I'm going to give some choices. Well, would you like to clean your blocks up now, or would you like to clean up them in 5 minutes? Or maybe you pick up the red ones and I pick up the blue ones. You compromise, right? So there's this compromise. There's this giving choices. We're still giving power while maintaining our own power. And then if it's like, you pick up the red ones, I'll pick up the blue ones. Nope, I don't want to pick up the box. Okay, well, and now we're starting to get dysregulated. The child is starting to escalate and things are starting to get, we're starting to lose control. The child's starting to lose control. So now I don't care about the blocks anymore. When we're at level 3, I no longer care about the blocks. I don't care about compliance. I don't care about any of that. All I care about is calming the child and bringing them back down and helping them regulate. That's the only thing I care about. So at this stage, the child's mad. I'm not cleaning up I don't want to do what you say, blah, blah, blah. Now we're at calming engagement. Okay, what do you need? What do you need right now? We kind of move into meeting needs, right? That empowering strategy. We move to that. So that's all. Our only goal is to calming engagement. A lot of times you have, again, you kind of preset a place where when a child starts to lose control, you preset a place where they can go and they can be safe. And maybe there's some sensory motor, some toys there, that kind of thing, where they can regulate themselves. Maybe there's a weighted blanket or something, but you have a preset place where they can go and they can calm themselves down. Again, teaching them to self-regulate. And then when they're done, they can come back, and when they're regulated, we can have that conversation, right? But that's the idea of calming engagement, right? Level 3, I don't care about them complying. And then once they're calm, we can move back up to maybe structured engagement. Right now, maybe we can give some choices and compromise and be a little bit more playful, right? But the idea is that we're always kind of moving between these, and it's a dance. It's a dance, and it takes some learning. And then level 4 is protective engagement. So protective engagement is, they're going to hurt me, they're going to hurt other people, they're going to hurt themselves. And this is when we bring outside resources, and TBRI doesn't really offer resources for this level, right? There's other resources out there. In my little workbook, I have some local resources for it, but I don't have that with me. But anyway, so level 4 is protective behavior. All I care about is protecting the child, protecting myself, protecting whoever's around. That's what we do at level 4. So yeah, do you have anything more to say about that, Mark?
Yeah, I would just say, and I would add that the best thing then, if you ever have to get to that protective engagement, which we rarely ever do, like if you're doing this, you rarely have to get to that point, but it does happen. Like we're not naive to think that it wouldn't. But once you get through that, a lot of times what we have to do is then allow the child a space and then return to this calming engagement place. I think there was a hand there.
Yeah,
Yes.
I had a question for Tanya.
Yeah.
Well, and for Mark as well. So I just had a question about when you were talking about having a specific place for the kids to calm down and then come back and re-engage in the relationship. I certainly understand that teaching that is when they are regulated and exploring that option of like regulating in a specific place when they are regulated. But I'm kind of curious, how do you work through that when they are dysregulated, but then they also don't want to go into that, safe, calm place?
Give choices.
Like, how do you work through that?
Yeah, where do you want to go? Where would be a safe place for you right now? What would work? What is going to work for you right now? What do you need? I mean, those words, what do you need, are so powerful, right? Just anything, what do you need? And then, a lot of times we can't think, right? The upstairs brain is shut down and we can't think. And so, do you need something to eat? Do you need something to drink? What, just kind of bringing in, oh yeah, maybe I am hungry, kind of. I mean, his example of the corn dogs are a really good one, but yeah, just all we're trying to do is meet the need. That's it. We're just trying to meet the need in calming engagement in level 3. So yeah, good question. Good question. Because it all sounds so pretty when we're talking about it right now, right? But when you're in the middle of it, I mean, I remember one time with my son, and he was not a small 9-year-old. When he had first come, I don't even remember what the argument was about, but it was escalating, and it was escalating quick. And I could tell, just because I was attuned, I could tell that what he needed was me, just all of me. And he was just sitting there, and he was about ready to blow. And I just wrapped my arms around him, and he was okay with it. And I just wrapped my arms around him, and I just held him, and he kind of melted into me. And because I was attuned, I knew that pressure really calms him down. He usually uses a weighted blanket, but I didn't have it. He wasn't going to go to the spot, right? He wasn't going to do that. And so this attunement, and it's really hard, and especially where you guys work, you don't always know the kids really well. You don't always have this relationship where you can be attuned like that. And so that is challenging. But yeah, just the main focus is just meeting the need. What do you need right now? What's going to help you regulate?
A lot of it's also establishing routines and having practice and rehearsing. Well, what happens when this happens? And we all know that when you're at that point, whatever that is, when the child's so blown up, they don't want to do anything. I have those moments too when I can't think straight. And so what I have to do is I have to give myself space. But there are times, like you're saying, when they don't want to give the space, they want to engage in that now. And that's where a lot of the practice ahead of time comes into play. But eventually, if they push it to a point and it does cross that line and they are going to be dangerous, then protective engagement. Like there was a time I had to gently guide my child into his room so that he can have his fit, and I would go in there with him unless he told me to get out. You will find that none of this is, like you were saying, it's not this nice pretty package, right? It is real, and we'll go in and out of TBRI. We have to also, probably one of our, since we're kind of close to being done here and opening it up for more questions, is understanding that one of the most important things we can do is give ourselves grace. as we are trying to implement what is a gold standard and wonderful way to do it. No one can do that all the time. We go through our own struggles. We can't see because we're looking through our own traumas sometimes, and we're just not going to do it. And so we need to forgive ourselves for the times that we struggle, and learn that we don't always have to really like the kids that we're working with. We may really be frustrated with them. We may have an abiding love. Maybe we're still growing on that, but we need to forgive ourselves for that and understand to just be at peace with where we're at and move forward. And as we forgive ourselves and we forgive the kids, they become more forgiving over time as well. But I will stress, over time. This is not a quick fix. You can see rapid improvement in many areas, but it's something where we're literally working on the giving of yeses, helping safety, connecting, empowering, changing their brain structure. And I've heard Dan Siegel say that when you are maybe an adoptive parent and you cross into this realm of helping the child grow these connections with all of these interactions, you can become, in a sense, the biological parent for this child, because you are molding their brain and they are biologically forming new connections in reaction to your co-regulation and your parenting with them. It's very powerful.
One more thing about the levels of response and even the ideal response. A big piece of all of this is that they know you're with them. And this is hard because we are scratching the surface of TBRI. I mean, this is a 24-hour training if you go through all of it. But just that I'm with you. I'm not leaving. I'm here. I'm staying here. I got into a car accident when I was in college, and kind of ran over into the median. It was pretty scary. And when I stopped, I was kind of in shock and I couldn't do anything. And somebody came to the door and said, "You need to undo your seatbelt." And I couldn't undo. My brain was I could not access that upstairs brain, and I couldn't regulate. I was so scared to be able to unbuckle my seatbelt. Well, when this person said, "I'm not going to leave you, I'm going to be here," the second he said that, all of a sudden my brain turned on and I could unbuckle my seatbelt. I mean, there's just so much in just knowing that you're not alone and that somebody's with you. There's a lot of power in that. So yeah, do you want to open it up for questions?
Yeah, I'm going to try to figure out how to now stop sharing. Let's see if I can. There we go.
Thanks for the question, Emily.
Let's open it up. Bring it on.
Yeah, how is this maybe different than what you've learned, or because you guys are all pretty experienced probably.
I work for Valley Behavioral Health. My name's Esther, and oh God, somebody's knocking at my door the whole
Hi,
hour.
Esther.
Hi. And so I didn't know that it was called TB, whatever. I wrote it down. The
TBRI.
training RI, yeah. But
Mhm.
this is what we use. Like we use this here all the time. But it's nice to have it like put in an order and just a good reminder of,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's trainable. Mhm.
Yeah, but lots of our kids are in foster care, and
Mhm.
lots of our kids have trauma, and we are a day treatment program for children and teens. So we use this all the time. And it really is true. If you treat the kids with kindness, they're far more likely to want to comply to the rules and your requests.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that I really liked about this is it took a lot of things that who I was and what I knew about attachment theory, and it put it in a really good organized fashion. And to be able to go from principle to principle, or within the principles, have very specific strategies and a way to explain it, and just the way it goes makes it fit very well. I'm glad that you guys do that.
I had another question as well. You had mentioned that you were in the home of your client. Is this typically done in the home, or can it also be done in the office?
It can be done in any environment you're at. That's a good question. I really like that was the model when I worked with that other company. And we do some of that now with Anson Family Counseling. The majority is in office and is super good in the office. When you have a parent and you have a child, youth, if you have that dyad, or you can have, multiple people in a session, you can make it happen. It's experiential. And we have to see it as an experiential model. There's no way to do this without actually getting in and trying it, trying the one-liners, trying giving choices, trying the eye contact and touch, or all of those other things that we talked about.
Like I said, I use it in the grocery store with the lady who's grumpy.
I wish I was always that good. Sometimes I just like, I'm out. Nah, let's be real, right? No,
I rest my eye system a lot in the grocery store.
Right, right.
I love it.
I had one other comment as well. Sorry that I'm taking up time, but at the family place, we were trained in another parenting model recently, and it was pretty powerful. And you guys mentioned it as well, in that you're not going to be 100%. And part of that model that we would teach our parents was, let's shoot for 70%. Like if you're complying 7 out of 10 times, like let's celebrate that. And that's compliant, like that's cooperation and compliance. And so when I heard that and learned that it's not all the time, because none of us are 100% all the time, it takes off so much pressure.
Something in TBRI that we talk about is lowering the bar.
Mm-hmm.
So, right, if we have the bar set up here and the kid just can't, it's not they won't, they can't, then we just lower the bar. And what can they do? What are they capable of, right? And then that helps us with expectations. It helps them with expectations. And then as they grow, we raise the bar. We just
I love that.
raising the bar, right? Yeah, so that's a concept like I said, we're just touching on so many really great things. So, Mark, people keep asking if we're going to share the presentation.
I saw that just barely in the chat. Yeah, we can. I mean, it's just no copyright on anything that we have here. When they look at their specific slides, they have copyrights on them, but with the information that we have, we can share that. The TBRI animate, ANIMAT animate, you can just look that up online and find it just like easy, right? But yeah, we can put all that, we can share that with Teresa. And then I'm imagining, Teresa, you could probably share that with everyone.
Yeah, I'll put it in the follow-up email.
Oh, cool. Awesome. We would love more questions. Like, honestly. That question you were just thinking about, go ahead. Yes, you can share it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. I'll keep asking.
Yeah.
So I was wanting to maybe hear about another example of just kind of what it looks like, just so I can have a more visual idea of how I would implement this in therapy and with clients. Just a couple of more examples of when you've used TBRI.
I have a bajillion, I feel like, from raising my boys. One that I just recently with my son, I know that a trigger for him is bedtime. Good things didn't happen at bedtime. So trigger for him is bedtime. I mean, and he's 16 now and it's still hard. And so the other day he got home from work, he was tired, it was late, and he needed to go to bed and not watch a show before. And I could tell he was something had him all worked up. And so I said, I wasn't really completely thinking about it. And I said, hey, bud, you're going to need to go to bed. We're not going to do TV tonight. We're just going to go to bed. And he just gave me this look, and I could tell it was the look that I'm about to blow. And because I saw that, I got into TBRI mode, which I should have been in the first place, but I got into TBRI mode. And I said, well, how do you prefer to go to bed? What do you want to do? And he said, I don't want to go to bed tonight. I just don't want to. And so now we're at like a level 2 or a level 3 almost, because if I kind of keep pushing it, he's going to move to a level 3. And so I said, okay, well, we can't not go to bed. I start kind of trying to be playful. We can't not go to bed. You have to eventually go to bed, right? And then he starts to loosen up. So I'm going back to level 1 because he's not quite escalated too far yet. I go back to level 1, and then he's just not responding. He's still kind of mad. And I said, okay, do you want to make a deal? And that's something that we say. That's one of our one-liners. Do you want to make a deal? And so then when I said that, I could tell he de-escalated. He just kind of calmed down. And he said, yeah, I want to sleep on the couch tonight. I just don't feel like going up to my room. And I was like, okay, you can sleep on the couch tonight if you'll go in 30 minutes. Is that a good deal? And he said, yeah, that's a good deal. And then that's how we did it. And that could have really escalated. He has escalated about bedtime in the past to a pretty high degree. And so, but that was kind of this dance of back and forth between the levels. So that's just an example from yesterday.
Is there anything specific people would want to know about a specific experience,
Yeah.
example for a specific principle?
One of the one-liners that we use in TBRI is asking versus telling. So we want kids to ask so that we can meet their needs, not tell us what they want. And so one of my kids in therapy, he went to the cabinet to go get the balloons. He loves the balloons, and he just went to go, and he's like, I'm going to get a balloon. And I just quickly said, are you asking me or telling me? In a really playful way, right? And he just kind of calmed down for a second, and he was like, yeah, can I have a balloon? And then he got one, and I said, yes, of course, I'm going to give yeses. And then it was fine. I said, you can have it if you wait until the end of our session to play with it. And then we actually used it in session. It was good. That's another example from yesterday or a couple of days ago.
I could think of an example as well when I just wasn't too long ago at the end of a therapy session. His mom came to pick up the kid, 9-year-old, and she had said something, or I had said something to him, and he was completely disrespectful and just kind of left and was not paying attention at all and was kind of being demanding. So instead of just kind of saying, well, that's the end of the therapy session, good luck, Mom, I used that moment to go to him, and I got down at his level and I looked at him and I said, well, I don't remember exactly what I said. It was, I need, basically I just brought the attention to the moment, and I did kind of kindly but firmly demanded, it's time to show respect. I need you to answer this question. I need you to give good eyes and answer the question. It was that firm, but I really pushed it with this kid because he needs to have that firm hand. And it was interesting. His mom was just like, yes, that's what we need. They need to know how to be firm with, and not just meeting this kid's needs to the point where it's too much. Like he's demanding it, and they're doing whatever for him. So
how did that land, Mark? How did that end?
Well, it ended well. The kid actually responded and listened to me. I find it's really good when you have that balance of kindness and firmness. It works. There's another family that I'm working with right now, where it was really hard. This kid, he is absolutely another little Tasmanian devil. Like he turns the office upside down when he comes. And when we actually have me and an intern and the parent working with this kid in a session. And what we do is we really focus on trying to stay firm, stay kind, and he's kind of getting at all of this nurturing, kind nurturing, and firm boundary setting the whole time. And his ability to listen to his foster mom and do better in the home has increased as well. It sometimes takes a Herculean effort at first to really
Yeah.
rein it in.
It's a dance for sure.
It is.
Yeah.
Esther, you popped in there for a moment. Did you have another question? I apologize for speaking when you were probably about to say something.
Oh, actually, Tanya started to kind of answer. I was just wondering if you guys had like some examples of some one-liners, like you just said one-liners, and I'm sure we use them all the time here, but I was wondering if you guys like had a list of ones that you really love to use.
Yeah. Are you asking or telling is a big one? Right. That's a big one. Are you asking me? And again, these need to be taught sort of ahead of time. Gentle and kind when kids are being rough. Mark, you can probably help think of
Yeah,
some.
with permission and supervision.
Yeah, that's.
And
a
you
good
can
one.
take a one-liner like that and you can make a whole lesson out of it. What you do is that when the kid's feeling well, you teach these social skills. And a fun way to teach with permission and supervision is to have a dart gun war with them. And you ask them to ask permission before they shoot. And if they say no, you have to not shoot them. Silly string, you can do the same thing with that. Making any of them a game. It could also, I have a whole list of them. Do you want, we could probably send
Yeah, we
that.
should have put that in the thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, with permission and supervision, I use that with my teenagers all the time. I'm gonna go be with my friend. Okay, well, with permission and supervision, you absolutely can. 100%, right? So that's a big yes, but I'm still being the parent, right? What are you doing? Who you're going to be? I mean, he knows all the things I want to say when I say yes, absolutely, with permission and supervision. Okay, we're going here and then we're going to do this and we're not sure and blah, blah, blah. And then who's going to be there? He knows that's what I'm asking too. Who's going to be there? So yeah, that's a really good one with permission and supervision. That's all. That's a really good
Yeah.
one. It's
With respect.
volumes. Yeah,
Uh-huh,
with
with
respect. That's
respect.
another one.
With
Yeah,
respect.
can you
is-
say that again with respect? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a big one. Yeah, try that again with respect. Just try it again.
Do you hear that? There's beauty in that because it's not, it doesn't have to be that demanding thing or some awful consequence. It's just, do you want to try it again? Don't we all need that? We all need that ability to try again. If we see it that way, it makes a big difference. Anyway, yeah, there's a
I
whole
like
host of
that.
them.
Sorry, with permission and supervision, I had one of my clients ran away for a few hours on Friday night, and the police had to go and look for her. And so one of the things that was part of her safety plan with the hospital, because she ended up going to the hospital, was they live on like 2 acres, and her mom's like, if you feel like you need to go and run and hide, like you can go run around in the field behind our house, but an adult has to go with you. So I love that because then we can use that verbiage of with permission and supervision.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
Do they have to run with them? I don't know if
No, they just have to see them. They have
Okay.
to be within eyesight. Like they go out with them and then she gets to run around.
I'm
So-
just playing. Like, no, I
She
hear
could
you.
run with them if she wanted to.
Yeah, if you want to. There's a point when I can, there's a point where I'm like, you have worn me out, kid. Like, no, right on. Very good. Any other questions? One thing I might mention is that TBRI and schools, that would be a really wonderful place for it to be more welcome and used. A lot of times teachers really fear losing control of their classroom. And this is a good method to be able to help maintain control. So for any of you who may have connections in schools, we would love to see what we can do to help spread this word through the school district and help teachers understand it and use it. There's a lot of school districts across the United States that are jumping on board with using these.
Yeah, they use it in courts. Family courts is another big place they're using it.
Yeah.
Yeah, jails, prisons, using it there. Yeah, there's a lot of, you can pretty much anywhere where there's people who are struggling. A good book that uses TBRI, The Empowered Child. Is that, no, that's not, The Connected Child, sorry. By Karen Purvis. That's a good book for TBRI. And then there's The Connected Parent as well, that Karen Purvis was a part of writing as well.
Looks
Help
like
for Billy.
Melissa wrote a book here, Help for Billy.
Mhm. I haven't heard of that book.
No, I haven't either. It sounds good.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so like suppose it's like hey, like I don't know, I'm just thinking of an example. Like suppose they slam the door, you're like, hey, you want to try that again? Then they like slam it again. Then you say, like, what do you need from me? Right? So I'm wondering, like, what if it's like they're like escaping consequences or like escaping follow through, and like you're trying to like support them and stuff, but you're like afraid that you're like falling into like enabling, or like they're getting out of stuff that's going to hurt them in the like not benefiting them in the long run. Like, yeah, how do you address that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And remember, we're always coming back to playful engagement. So the slamming the door example, right? Slamming the door, no, we're going to a level 2, go to a level 3. I'm going to find out what you need, what happened today, what's going on, what blah, right? We're going to figure it out. And then we're always going to bring them back to a place. We don't end the engagement until they are regulated. And once they're regulated, then we say, hey, bud, can you go try that door again? Can we just do that again? And usually they're like, yeah, that was dumb, right? So we're always coming back. We still are correcting the behavior. They're not getting away with it, if you will. We're still correcting the behavior, but we're hanging with them until they can do it.
I think
So like if they're
no, go ahead, Samuel.
so they're like, you want to try that again? They slam the door. You're like, hey, what do you need? They're like, I need you to leave me alone. Then you walk out, then you come back later, and then you're like, hey, you want to try and close the door again? Or
Yeah.
like, do you want to talk now?
Yeah,
Like,
okay, I'll
just
leave you
give them a
alone for
break
a
and then,
Yeah, I'll leave
What?
you alone for 10 minutes. Does that work? I'll leave
okay,
you for 30
okay, cool.
Right? Does that work?
That
Like we're
makes
still
sense.
negotiating needs. We're always, yeah, there's so many deeper principles in this. We got to help them and teach them to negotiate their needs. I need to be alone right now. Okay, I'm going to hear that. But when can I come back? When should I come back? If they say
Okay.
never, then we know we're going to go to a level 3, right?
Yeah, I think it's
Okay.
important to look at it from a perspective of when these kids are misbehaving, a lot of times we want to look at it like a won't. This kid won't comply. But it's important to look at it as a can't. And that may seem kind of weird, because if you think can't, then, well, that's not good. Will they be able to? Actually, it's harder when it's a won't. Because if it's a won't, there's nothing we can do about it, because we're butting up against this child's agency. When it's a can't, what we do is we say, what can we do to help this become a can? And I get it, right? I've had the kid just kind of like flippantly, like, oh, you don't want me to slam the door? Bang, I'm going to slam it again, right? And then that takes an enormous amount of patience and willpower not to want to slam the door again back at him. Oh, I can do it harder than you or whatever. But if we're patient, what we see is that the need will emerge. And if we focus on that, and obviously if the kid's slamming it and slamming is going to break it, then they're kind of creeping up to that level 4, and it's, we need to intervene at times. But most of the time, what we can see is that kids they want something, they need something. And if we take the time, take the engagement off of that behavior to something else, like Tanya was saying earlier, it becomes all about, what do you need? How do we help you calm down? If it's me backing off for a time, great. I'll back off. And then we re-engage. We're not ready yet? That's fine. I'll come back. I'm here for you. And kids will regulate. Sometimes if they don't want to eat, you slip some food onto the door for him and you say, here you go. I know you don't want it, but when you do, here it is. Or it's just very respectful, but also very demanding at the same time. And then you just hang with it. I like that though.
Oh,
Good.
thank you.
They said we needed to be done, Teresa, yeah?
Yeah, we just need to finish up so that folks that need to go at 1:30 can go. I have added the link to the feedback survey in the chat, so everybody should have access to that now if they would like to do that right after. But I will also send it in the follow-up email with the slides, and it looks like a couple of folks have asked about the list of books as well, so if we can get the list of any books,
Yeah, I put that in the chat.
yeah, we'll make sure that everybody gets that. And for those that would like the continuing education credit, you do have to take that feedback survey. And you have to enter in your information so that we can make the certificates. We host these continuing education opportunities on the third Friday of every month. Next month, our training will be on organizational leadership and supervision. So a little bit of a different training, but that's what it will be next month. And if you all, here, I just put it up, but if you all follow the Transforming Communities Institute on social media, we have 3 different platforms that we engage with: Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. We always have reminders for these trainings. You can rewatch them on YouTube. So you can subscribe to our YouTube channel and you'll be able to watch them whenever. And then USU Social Work also has a Facebook and Instagram. They do separate events and trainings, but we do a lot in collaboration with them. If you all do have any last questions for Mark, Tanya, or myself, you can feel free to stay on the Zoom. Otherwise, you can email any of us with further questions, and hopefully we'll see you all next time. But that's all that we need right now, unless you have further questions.